Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Noah's voice cracked as he screamed, a guttural, almost primal sound that echoed through the sterile, tension-filled walls of the Newman family clinic, his hands shaking as he clutched the results in disbelief, the words "no baby" blazing across the page like a cruel joke, tearing apart the fragile hope that had been building in his chest ever since Sienna had first whispered those tentative, nervous words about a possible pregnancy. And as he looked up, his eyes met Sienna's tear-streaked face, wide with shock, confusion, and guilt, her own hands trembling as if she could somehow physically catch the invisible shards of their crumbling future, while Matt, lurking in the corner with a smug half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, felt a surge of triumph tinged with a dangerous edge, knowing the secret he carried could rewrite the lives of everyone in the room. And as Noah's shouts ricocheted off the walls, he couldn't stop the bitter questions pouring from his lips, demanding to know how this could be, why the test had come back negative when all signs had pointed otherwise, and why Sienna, the woman he loved with an intensity that had always teetered on obsession, hadn't been honest, hadn't noticed the inconsistencies that had seemed obvious to him, while Sienna, quivering under the weight of her own fear, tried to explain that she had trusted Matt, that she had relied on him, that the doctor had merely confirmed what Matt had told her. But Noah's grief and anger were too raw, too immediate, and he could only hear the word fake echoing in his mind, every fiber of his being screaming that Matt had manipulated them, twisted the truth for some hidden agenda, some advantage only he could understand. And as the room seemed to close in, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on their strained faces, the silence between Sienna and Noah became deafening, filled with the unspoken accusations, the potential betrayal that could destroy not just their fragile bond but ripple outwards to involve Lily, Kane, Phyllis, and even the ever-watchful eyes of Victor and Nikki, who had long suspected Matt's meddling ways and now, perhaps, had been proven right in the most devastating way possible. And in the corner Matt's mind raced, calculating every move, every lie he had spun, knowing that if this deception was exposed, it could cost him everything, yet relishing the momentary control he held over Noah and Sienna, over the narrative of their lives, because a baby had never been just a baby in Genoa City. It was leverage, power, a claim over hearts and futures. And as Noah collapsed onto the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands while Sienna sank to the floor, feeling the weight of shame and confusion pressing down on her, the doctor stepped forward cautiously, explaining in clinical terms that felt cold and detached, that sometimes pregnancy tests fail, that hormones fluctuate, that timing matters, and yet none of it seemed to soothe the emotional maelstrom swirling around them. For Noah, this was no medical lesson, it was a personal betrayal, a punch to the gut that made him question everything he thought he knew about Sienna, about Matt, about trust itself. And as he finally lifted his head, his eyes red and wild, he demanded the truth, the absolute truth. And Sienna, shaking, whispered Matt's name, unable to deny the shadow of suspicion that had always hung over him. And as the words left her lips, the room seemed to tilt, reality blurring as Noah's mind raced with possibilities, imagining scenarios where Matt had doctored the test, swapped vials, influenced the doctor, all while playing the concerned friend, the confidant, the one who could be trusted. And as he spoke, his voice quivering with rage, every person present felt the tension snap like a live wire, because in Genoa City, secrets never stayed buried, lies never remained hidden, and Matt's possible deceit could ignite a chain reaction that would reach every corner of their intertwined lives, from Lily's judgmental glare to Kane's protective instincts, from Phyllis's calculating mind to Victor's relentless pursuit of control. And yet, amidst the chaos, Sienna tried to reassure Noah, her voice breaking, her hands clutching his arms as she promised him that no matter the outcome, they would face it together. But Noah, consumed by hurt, betrayal, and the sudden, terrifying emptiness of a future he thought he had in his grasp, could only feel the weight of loss pressing down, the anger building into a roaring inferno as he considered confronting Matt, demanding answers, seeking justice or revenge, anything to reclaim the sense of certainty and security that had been ripped from his life in what felt like an instant. And as he paced the room, muttering accusations, threats, and desperate pleas for honesty, Sienna's tears flowed freely, reflecting the dim light like fractured glass, each droplet a testament to the fragility of trust. And Matt, still calm but internally seething, watched the unfolding drama, aware that one misstep could undo everything he had orchestrated, that Noah's wrath, Sienna's despair, and the potential involvement of the Newman and Abbott families could turn his careful plan into chaos, yet also feeling a perverse thrill at the power he wielded, because in a world of schemers, manipulators, and fragile alliances, control was everything, and right now, he held the narrative in his hands, even if just for a fleeting, dangerous moment, and as the tension reached a fever pitch, the door swung open to reveal another layer of the drama, perhaps Lily with her usual sharp observations, Cain with protective anger, or even Victor himself, each entry adding pressure, each gaze a judgment, and Noah, unable to contain the torrent of emotion, demanded that Matt confess, that the truth be revealed, that the tangled web of lies be untangled immediately, while Sienna, caught between loyalty and fear, tried to mediate, to explain, to protect, but the words felt useless, the tension unyielding, because in this crucible of betrayal, desire, and desperation, no one could predict what would happen next, and as the moment stretched, thick with anticipation, shock, and the very real possibility that Matt had indeed faked the baby test, every heartbeat felt like a countdown to disaster, every glance a potential spark for confrontation, and the scene became a tableau of human emotion at its rawest, where love, anger, trust, and deceit collided in a storm of intensity so powerful that it threatened to consume them all, leaving no certainty, no safe harbor, only the looming question that would haunt every conversation, every glance, every decision going forward. Did Matt really fake the test? And if so, how far would he go to maintain his control, and how much devastation would he leave in his wake before the truth, inevitable and explosive, finally emerged, leaving Noah, Sienna, and everyone entangled in their orbit to pick up the pieces of lives they may never see the same way again, forever changed by the revelation that the life they imagined, the baby they thought was coming, the future they had hoped to build, might never exist, all because one man had decided that manipulation was worth the cost of innocence, trust, and love in the treacherous, ever-shifting landscape of Genoa City. Noah's mind raced in a chaotic storm of disbelief, fury, and heartbreak as the implications of the no-baby test slammed into him again and again, each wave threatening to drown him in grief and rage, his fingers trembling around the crumpled paper, the inked words a cruel emblem of betrayal, and as Sienna knelt before him, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, he remembered the countless nights they had spent dreaming of a child together. Nights filled with whispered promises, plans for a nursery, arguments over names that now felt unbearably empty, and he couldn't stop the bitter thought that Matt, the one man he had trusted implicitly, the one man who had always seemed like a friend, could have been orchestrating this devastating illusion from the start, subtly influencing decisions, planting seeds of doubt, manipulating conversations, and guiding Sienna toward false hope. And Noah imagined, with horrifying clarity, the way Matt's calculating eyes had lingered a moment too long when Sienna mentioned a missed period, how he had suggested she take the test at a time when the results might be inconclusive, and suddenly every kind word Matt had ever spoken, every gesture of concern, every shared laugh or supportive pat on the back seemed tainted, every interaction now a potential lie designed to control outcomes, a chess game with real human lives as pawns. And Noah's anger, already a blazing inferno, intensified as he thought about how easily Matt had ingratiated himself into the couple's intimate life, knowing Sienna's vulnerabilities, exploiting her hopes, and using them against both her and Noah. And as his thoughts spiraled, he couldn't stop imagining the worst-case scenario. What if the test had been faked entirely, the results deliberately manipulated, the doctor's assurances twisted, every word a calculated deception? And if so, why? What was Matt truly after, and how far would he go to ensure that his machinations succeeded? To watch Sienna suffer while Noah roared in helpless fury, to see the foundation of their love cracked, maybe irreparably, as he clung to the illusion of hope that had never existed. And as the room seemed to shrink around them, the walls closing in with oppressive pressure, Sienna reached out a trembling hand, desperate to soothe, to explain, to anchor Noah in the fragile reality that she had never wanted this to happen, never wanted to deceive him. But Noah, eyes wild and red-rimmed, could see only the shadow of Matt in every gesture, every word, every blink, and the voice that escaped his lips was a raw, broken sound of accusation, of pleading, of fury. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you didn't let him do this to us." And Sienna, shaking, could barely meet his gaze, could barely breathe under the crushing weight of her own guilt and confusion, because the truth was murky, complicated, and terrifying, a truth that Matt's silence made more deafening than words ever could, and as Noah's pulse throbbed with unrelenting tension, he recalled the strange inconsistencies he had noticed over the past weeks, the subtly offhanded remarks from Matt, the odd timing of Sienna's appointments, the vague evasions when he had questioned details, and his mind, racing like a runaway train, connected each dot into a picture of betrayal so complete that it made his chest ache. A picture where Matt had maneuvered every step, every decision, every conversation to position himself as the puppet master while the couple he had supposedly supported suffered in perfect ignorance, and the thought of Matt's smug satisfaction, hidden behind a mask of casual charm, made Noah's blood boil. Hotter than he could ever have imagined, a fury so deep and personal it threatened to consume his reason, and yet, as his body shook with emotion, his mind refused to relent, dissecting every interaction with obsessive precision, recalling every smile, every supportive word, every moment of guidance that might have been tainted by ulterior motives, and he began to question Sienna's own innocence, not out of doubt of her heart but out of a desperate need to understand the enormity of the betrayal, to locate the boundaries of truth in a world where deception seemed to touch every corner. And as he paced the floor, back and forth, the paper crumpled in his fist like a lifeline to some hidden reality, Sienna followed, her own despair a mirror of his, unable to bridge the chasm between her intentions and Noah's perception, as the room itself seemed to echo with the unspoken tension, the cold, clinical lighting casting long shadows that stretched across the walls like the fingers of some unseen manipulator, fingers that had touched every secret, every hidden fear, and as Noah's anger reached a crescendo, the door opened with a sharp click, revealing Matt himself, stepping in with the carefully calibrated ease of a man who believed himself untouchable, whose confidence seemed to radiate from every measured movement, and in that moment, Noah felt his heart lurch as if his body were betraying him, torn between the instinct to protect, to confront, to strike, and the unbearable shock of seeing the architect of their possible misery standing there, calm, collected, almost disturbingly composed, and Matt's voice, smooth and controlled, cut through the tension like a scalpel, measured and precise, asking questions that sounded innocuous but carried the weight of hidden intent, probing for reactions, testing the waters, seeing how far the emotional storm had already escalated, while Noah, driven by a mix of rage, despair, and desperation, hurled accusations, his words sharp and fragmented, almost incoherent in their intensity. Did you do this? Did you fake the test? Did you manipulate everything? And Matt, with a sly half-smile, deflected, twisted, suggested that perhaps Noah was overreacting, that timing, hormones, and medical anomalies could explain the negative results, yet every syllable dripped with a confidence that only made Noah more certain of his duplicity, and Sienna, torn between the need to protect Matt and the need to stand with Noah, found herself in an impossible position, caught in the middle of two men whose actions, intentions, and manipulations threatened to redefine the trajectory of their lives forever. And as the tension mounted to unbearable heights, Lily appeared, her sharp gaze immediately assessing the situation, her own instincts screaming that Matt's involvement could never be innocent, and her presence added another layer of pressure, another set of expectations, judgments, and potential consequences, because in Genoa City, nothing happened in isolation. Every deception, every lie rippled outward, touching every family, every friendship, every alliance, and as Lily's voice joined the cacophony of accusations, suggestions, and desperate pleas, Noah felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, trapping them all in a labyrinth of secrets and lies from which there was no obvious escape, and yet, even amidst the chaos, he refused to relinquish his demand for the truth, for confirmation or denial of Matt's role in what felt like the most personal, devastating betrayal of his life, while Sienna, standing at the center of this maelstrom, tried to anchor herself, tried to navigate the treacherous waters of loyalty, guilt, and fear, aware that one wrong word, one misplaced glance, could ignite further conflict, and as Matt continued to speak, carefully choosing his phrases, insinuating possibilities, planting seeds of doubt even as he denied direct involvement, the room's atmosphere thickened, charged with electric tension, a volatile mixture of anger, heartbreak, suspicion, and fear, and Noah, pacing like a caged animal, could feel his mind unraveling, thinking not just about the baby, not just about the test, but about the broader implications, the impact on their future, the damage to their trust, the potential fallout with the Newman and Abbott families, the way secrets, once exposed, could erupt like a bomb, leaving devastation in their wake, and he began to imagine scenarios where this deception, if true, could spiral beyond control. confrontations in the Abbott mansion, whispered rumors at Jabot, interventions from Victor, schemes concocted by Lily or Kane, and even potential public scandals, because in a city as interconnected as Genoa, no personal betrayal remained personal for long, and Matt, acutely aware of the drama unfolding, measured every response, every gesture, every blink, knowing that control was fleeting, that perception was reality, and that in a world governed by appearances, even the hint of exposure could unravel his careful plan. And as Noah's emotional storm reached a near breaking point, Sienna finally managed to voice the trembling acknowledgement that perhaps Matt had acted deceitfully, that the possibility could not be ignored, and as her words hung in the air, the collective tension in the room became almost palpable, a living entity pressing on every chest, demanding resolution, demanding confrontation, demanding that the tangled web of lies be unraveled once and for all. And in that moment every character, Noah, Sienna, Matt, Lily, and even the shadow of Victor's influence lurking just beyond, felt the magnitude of what was at stake, because this was more than a failed test, more than a whispered secret, more than a betrayal. It was a test of character, of loyalty, of love, of power, of trust, a crucible in which the fates of lives intertwined would be decided, and as the seconds stretched into eternity, every heartbeat became a drum of tension, every glance a dagger of accusation, every breath a reminder of the fragility of their interconnected lives. And Noah, finally confronting Matt directly, voice raw and trembling, demanded not just answers but accountability, demanded recognition of the hurt inflicted, demanded confession, while Sienna, her face streaked with tears, struggled to reconcile the man she had trusted with the manipulator she now feared he might be. And as Matt's eyes flickered ever so slightly, betraying perhaps a hint of guilt or perhaps a carefully controlled flicker of calculation, the room held its collective breath, because in Genoa City, the next word spoken, the next revelation, the next gesture could ignite a chain reaction unlike anything they had yet witnessed, and Noah, driven by heartbreak, fury, and desperate hope, braced himself for whatever storm would inevitably follow, knowing that no matter the outcome, lives had been forever altered, trust irreversibly tested, and the simple promise of a baby, a symbol of hope and love, now hung suspended in uncertainty, a fragile ember in the aftermath of deception, manipulation, and the enduring, consuming chaos of Genoa City's relentless drama. As the tension in the room thickened, Noah's mind refused to relent, replaying every detail of the past few weeks with relentless precision, each memory now reframed through the lens of suspicion and betrayal. He remembered the moment Sienna had first confided her possible pregnancy to him, the tentative, almost shy way she had whispered the words while her fingers nervously twisted the edge of her sweater, and how he had felt his heart swell with hope and anticipation, imagining the tiny life that might grow inside her, imagining a future together where laughter, late-night feedings, and small moments of domestic bliss would bind them forever. And yet now all those dreams seemed to collapse into a void of uncertainty, a vacuum created not by fate but by human deception, and he couldn't help but recall the subtle inconsistencies in Matt's behavior during that time, the way he had hovered a little too close during Sienna's appointments, the offhand comments that seemed helpful but now appeared calculated, the tiny glances exchanged with the doctor, the carefully measured words that had always hinted at inside knowledge, and suddenly, Noah felt a cold wave of realization that the possibility of Matt faking the baby test was not just a hypothetical fear but a terrifyingly plausible scenario, one that threatened to undo everything he had believed in, everything he had hoped for, everything he had built with Sienna, and the thought made his chest tighten with a suffocating intensity, a physical reminder of the emotional storm raging within him. Sienna, for her part, was caught in a whirlwind of guilt, fear, and heartbreak, her mind racing through moments that now seemed tinged with unintentional complicity. She remembered calling Matt in a panic after her first missed period, seeking reassurance, seeking guidance, believing he had her best interests at heart, and how easily he had calmed her, suggesting the timing of the test and offering to accompany her to the clinic, all while planting seeds of doubt about the reliability of testing and subtly influencing her perception, guiding her toward acceptance of results that now seemed impossible to trust. And Sienna's hands shook as she realized how easily trust could be weaponized, how fragile the boundary between guidance and manipulation could be, and how easily one man's cunning could bend the lives of others to his will, leaving a trail of uncertainty and emotional devastation. Noah, meanwhile, could feel his pulse thundering in his ears as he imagined the fallout, not just for himself and Sienna, but for everyone connected to them. He envisioned the conversations he would have to endure with Lily, who would undoubtedly scold him for letting Matt's influence creep into his life, who would observe every nuance of Sienna's behavior and interpret it as weakness or guilt, and he pictured Cain, the ever-protective figure, confronting Matt with fury and authority, ready to defend Sienna at any cost, and he imagined Victor, with his calculating mind and relentless pursuit of control, weighing the situation, considering leverage, perhaps even turning Matt's potential deceit into a tool for his own power. And every scenario seemed to spiral further into chaos, the ripples extending beyond immediate concerns into a larger web of schemes, alliances, and vendettas, a reminder that in Genoa City, nothing happened in isolation, and that secrets once exposed could erupt into uncontrollable firestorms. Noah's thoughts then shifted back to Matt, standing in the room with that infuriatingly calm demeanor, and he could almost see the wheels turning in Matt's mind, plotting, calculating, analyzing every possible reaction, and it made Noah's anger intensify, not just at the deception itself but at the audacity, the cold precision, the sheer manipulation of human emotion as if people were mere chess pieces, as if love, trust, and hope were just tools to be used and discarded, and he felt a primal need to strip away the layers of charm and control, to expose the man behind the mask, to demand acknowledgement of the hurt caused, and to reclaim some semblance of agency in a situation that had made him feel helpless and violated, while Sienna, observing the intensity of his emotional storm, tried desperately to offer reassurance, to remind him that regardless of Matt's actions, they could still navigate this together. But Noah's grief and fury rendered her words almost meaningless, swallowed by the roar of emotions that had been unleashed, emotions that were raw, immediate, and consuming. As the minutes stretched, the room became a crucible of suspense, every glance, every gesture, every breath weighted with meaning, as if time itself had slowed to magnify the emotional intensity. Noah, pacing in a tight circle, muttering fragments of accusation and desperate questions, suddenly remembered the first time he had met Matt under seemingly innocuous circumstances, how he had been charming, helpful, almost disarmingly supportive, and how he had been welcomed into their circle, celebrated as a friend, a confidant, even a brother-in-arms in the labyrinthine politics of Genoa City, and how that trust, once granted, had now become the very thing that made Matt's potential betrayal feel so catastrophic, and he realized that in Matt's hands familiarity and intimacy had become tools of manipulation, and the thought sent shivers down his spine, a mixture of fear, revulsion, and incredulous disbelief. Sienna's mind then drifted to memories of late-night conversations, whispered fears about conceiving, about timing, about the stress and pressure of their lives, and how Matt had always been there, ready with reassurance, ready with advice, ready with suggestions that now seemed suspect, and the realization gnawed at her. Had she been unwittingly complicit? Had she trusted someone who was orchestrating this emotional torment for reasons she could not yet comprehend? And as she watched Noah's anguish, she felt an almost physical pull of guilt, a recognition that love, no matter how pure, could be exploited, twisted, and weaponized in ways that left no room for innocence or simplicity, and she wondered if the relationship they had painstakingly built could survive this storm, if Noah's capacity for forgiveness could withstand the magnitude of deception, and if Matt's machinations could ever truly be undone, or if the shadow of manipulation would linger indefinitely, a reminder of human fragility in the face of cunning and ambition.